Okay, let's make a start. Good afternoon and welcome to the second of the FTF Agents Association meetings. Tony, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Ryan. We've yet another sunny day in Newcastle. We've had 2 weeks of glorious sort of sunshine. I'm really good. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, and here we are indoors doing a webinar, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I think I would prefer to be on a beach somewhere, but I guess the agents on this call will be starting to look towards the summer transfer window, as am I, so it's not a time to rest, it's a time to get your ducks in a row.
Absolutely. Tony, just before I get you to say a few words about things that have been going on, I'll just go through what we're going to do today. We've got a sort of jam-packed agenda. It'll take us as long as it takes us. We'll see how we go. We're absolutely delighted to be joined by Gregor Reiter, who we're going to get on shortly, and I'm sure many of you already either know or know of. We'll also be being joined by Peter Rourke as well, and we'll be talking about some of the summer transfer fun. We've got some bits of business to do as well, Tony, and then finally we'll be being joined by Andy Watson from the GBE Expert Hub a little bit later towards the end. But Tony, a few words on where you feel the world of agency is at before we get into it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I was one of the people who, obviously, I've been following FIFA's football agent regulations for almost 4 years now, maybe, tracking every sort of twist and turn, every court case, every movement in that ongoing process. And I was sort of hoping that, around this time we'd have a little bit more clarity, we'd have some sort of real steer from the European Court of Justice. I think just if we're talking about agency in the UK and Ireland, in the English market, we have some certainty with what happened with the agents who challenged the FAR document with our football association. So we have some certainty there, which is great. But obviously, I'm watching on and seeing how things go, and we're coming from this as an agents association. We're coming from this as a really practical, like, what do we need to know? What do we need to do? We've already all of us already have jumped through a lot of hoops to get whether it's your agent license or to get a foot on the ladder. So we're all sort of quite used to rule following. And I think, in my sort of 20 odd years of working as a football agent, there's been several rule changes. This undoubtedly has been the biggest, the most far reaching. And just some of the little things that happened, once you got your agent's license, we were sort of told, oh, great, you'd be able to work worldwide. That's not panning out quite like that. Um, you still have to register in this country. Other countries have got different registration, but you have to register with our FA if you're going to work in England, as well as having your agent's license. So that's, an extra bit of admin. Obviously, there's different systems in each country you go to. So France, you've still got to go through their procedures to become a licensed agent in France, and Italy similar. And I think other countries have, different sets of rules. And I'm not 100% clear what's happening in Germany, but for the
Yeah.
guys on the call, Ryan, it's, we are focusing on what's in front of us, which is the UK and Ireland, the English speaking markets. Obviously, the Premier League is, the biggest marketplace and the most financially powerful in the world, and everyone, well, almost everyone wants to work here or have players here. So that's why I think this Agents Association is so important, Ryan.
Yeah, and hopefully we can have plenty of discussion today. The chat is open, so if anybody's got any general comments, please put it in the chat. If anybody's got any questions, please do pop them
Yeah.
into the Q&A box. It
And
makes it much easier.
and I would add, Ryan, we've had on the first meeting, we had representation from some of the member associations, so the Scottish FA, the English FA, and I think that's the same today. Obviously, they're just watching and seeing how we go. We're an early stage agents association, so we'll see how we get on. But we want to have, and I need to stress this again, we want to have good relationships with all of the football's governing bodies, and particularly with the member associations, so that we can help to influence, guide them, advise them when necessary, and also be a sounding board. So I think that role as well is really important. Look, we'd like to grow the membership numbers. We will do that, but having that central role, I think, is important.
Spot on, absolutely spot on. Right, let's crack on. And as I said, we are really delighted to be able to welcome Gregor Reiter. So, Tony, do you just want to give Gregor a bit of an intro whilst I bring him in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've known Gregor for a couple of years now, and he's absolutely fantastic. He's done lots of webinars for us. He's been to the Football Transfer Forum as well. He's a lawyer by trade at Fischer and Partner in Germany, and he's also a FIFA Football Agent Working Group member. So, he's very well versed on what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'll translate it. That means big deal, Gregor. You're a big deal.
He is well, yeah, and he's a really great guy. I've met him in person quite a few times, and yeah, he's a really great guy.
Yeah, thank you. I think you put the bar high enough now.
Gregor, are you at some sort of Star Wars convention? What's the background going on here?
Actually, no, that's the background is the homepage of our law firm, Fischer and Partner. AI created by my dear partner Jörg Fischer, who is one of the Germany's leading legal scholars when it comes to AI and anything that has to do with communications, press, media, so on and so forth. So he's the real brain of the company. I just tag along.
Maybe don't pass that feedback on then to him.
Okay. Listen, Gregor, you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this this webinar. So we'll try and lose that theme, especially for the guys at the law firm.
So Gregor, thank you so much for being with us. So much going on. Of course, there's nothing much higher than going on than Harry Kane winning his first title as a player. I'm sure that's been the main front and back page news in Germany.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you may know, he having played his second season in Germany, he is extremely well liked. I think he is one of the players in the Bundesliga that receives the greatest admiration, not only from the fans of Bayern Munich, but from everybody who loves football. We're really, really glad that he is playing in Germany. And although coming from the Ruhr Valley, I am known not to be an ardent supporter of Bayern Munich. I am happy for Harry Kane to have finally won a club title, and I'm proud that was done in Germany.
Yeah, and of course Eric Dyer has been at Bayern as well, but he's away now, isn't he? He's going to be leaving.
I think he is, yes, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I wonder where Harry Kane's watching the final tonight between the Conference League final tonight between
Europa League, yeah.
Oh, between
sorry,
Tottenham
Europa League.
Yeah, between Tottenham and Manchester, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because that you could see that would have been
as a real Bavarian, he probably would watch it in a nice beer Hofbräuhaus thing.
Would he be wearing his lederhosen while he's watching it, do you think?
Well, if he's accumulated enough, yes, he would.
It's the wrong time of year, Tony. It's the wrong time
Oh,
of
is
year.
it?
It's
Sorry,
the wrong
sorry,
time of year.
guys. Sorry, guys.
You're not here to speak about lederhosen, Gregor. We have had, I don't know how to describe it really. It depends on how you read it. A ruling, a reading, a judgment, a statement from the European Court of Justice. Can you give the people tuning in what was it, and really what does it mean?
Okay, I know there's been made a lot of fuss about that opinion that was published last Thursday, and it really, you have to put it in perspective by who wrote that opinion. It's the Advocate General who gave his opinion concerning the three cases relating to the agent regulations, and to understand the impact of that opinion, you have to understand the role of the Advocate General. Now, the Advocate General is not a judge. He's not a member of the Judicial Court of the European Court of Justice, although he is located at the European Court of Justice. And what the Advocate General is, it's basically a role that was introduced to the European Court of Justice in the 1950s by the French. Now, we all know, as Germans, as English, nothing ever good has come out of France. And
Wow.
so
Wow. Gregor, we'll have to. Can we cut that?
I just apologize to all the French here. The thing is, when the European Court of Justice was established in the late 1950s, the French didn't. It was basically based on the way the Germans facilitated their courts, with extremely independent judges, which is something the French don't trust. At their highest court in Paris, they also have an Advocate General. So this figure was introduced to the European Court of Justice, which is unknown to any, like, I don't know, I don't think you have a similar role in the UK. We certainly don't have it in Germany. The US don't know some figurehead like that. It's typical French. And what it is, it's a political judicial head who advises the court. So basically, he's put there by the government to represent the government's interests, and he will have to say something about a certain case pending in front of the ECJ, and the court is absolutely free whether they follow him or not, or whether they follow parts of what he said and parts of or disagree with parts and agree with the other parts. So, and if we remember what the Advocate General said in the Super League case, was basically that what UEFA and FIFA did was in line with European law. When the judgment came out 6 months later, the ECJ said the total opposite. So obviously here, I mean, I happened to be at FIFA last Thursday when the opinion was published, and they were a bit surprised by themselves that it was that he basically said, yeah, it's all in line with
Gregor, can I just jump in there? Was it, did FIFA sort of thinking, oh, this is great, because it sounds like that it was supporting what they've done?
Yes, I mean, of course they liked it, and automatically they said, well, this is great. This is exactly what we have been saying for the entire time. He's right. And of course, the agent or the agent associations rushed in and said, no, this is not right. This is in violation of ECJ rulings of the past, which it is. And bear in mind what the Advocate General really is. If his opinion would have been the other way around, I would probably now sit here and say, yeah, what a Advocate General, great thing. Everything good so far has come out of France, and he's spot on. So just in a nutshell, it's nice that he said something, but it doesn't really matter. It's
Right.
the ECJ that matters.
And when can we expect that ruling then, the final sort of ruling?
Usually the ECJ rules between 3 and 6 months after the Advocate General published his opinion.
So it'll
So
be after the transfer window,
yes,
basically.
yes, yes.
After the
So
transfer window. And
early fall, late, like early winter, late fall, something like that.
right, okay. And what's the situation? I mean, obviously we're talking about the UK and Ireland here, but what's the situation with the German opposition to the FFAR?
From a legal point, it's basically all a big mess. Maybe with the one exception being the UK. You guys have a arbitration ruling that cannot be challenged in court anymore. So basically, any questions relating to the FAR and the national football agents regulations in the UK is settled.
Mm.
Now, that is extremely important for all the cases that are still pending, because one of the things that the EU arbitration court said was there cannot be a fee cap.
Yeah.
Now, if the ECJ would follow the Advocates General opinion, there would be a fee cap in the European Union, which would not be applicable in the UK. Now that leads to further disaster, because the single strongest markers will become even stronger. Is that really what FIFA wants? Is that what UEFA wants? Is that what we intend from a political point of view? Now, furthermore, we have the ECJ ruling, and under the assumption they follow the Advocates General opinion. We have 2 court rulings in Germany. They are in preliminary stages, both saying the FAR is a hardcore cartel. It cannot be justified under any argument. Now, the ECJ ruling would not contradict that, but the ECJ does not rule on merits. It rules on questions presented to it by a court. In this case, the district court in Mainz, which is not the one that issued the rulings in Germany. Those were the district court in Dortmund and the appellate court in Düsseldorf. So we would have the funny situation that all of us, and let's say the ECJ decides as the Advocate General would, it goes back to the district court in Mainz, and the district court of Mainz then would have to rule on the merits with keeping the opinion of the ECJ in mind, at the same time facing 2 court rulings in Germany that say the exact opposite.
Mm.
Now, if you're the justice of the district court in Mainz, you sit up praying and hope that the ECJ does not follow the Advocate General rule, because then you are between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Because if the ECJ, if the district court then follows the ECJ, it will go to the next appellate court and will automatically end up in the federal court. And the federal court in Germany has always been very feisty when it comes to telling the ECJ, this is my jurisdiction and not yours. So basically, we're all in a mess right now.
Yeah.
If the ECJ follows the Advocates General opinion, this legal uncertainty that we're all facing with regards to the agent regulations will continue for at least another 3 to 5 years.
Wow. About 3 to 5 years, Gregor.
That's usually how long the Supreme Court in Germany takes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I mean, obviously we've got the certainty with the Rule K judgment that was probably a year ago now, I think. But the situation you described, Gregor, would be an absolute own goal for European markets.
Exactly.
Agents would obviously think, well, there's no fee cap in the UK. Let's move our players there. We'll get better commissions, and rightly so. I mean, I've never thought it would fly the fee cap, but it's it's finally balanced, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
Or the other territories, Tony, or the other territories trying to attract players.
well, exactly. But you could just see that you're giving I mean, the Premier League is pushing ahead of all them other leagues in Europe anyway, in terms of a financial powerhouse. And you
Yeah,
give them another advantage, another thing to build on, and wow, wow,
yeah,
it would be it would be a massive own goal anyway, wouldn't it?
yeah. It would lead to a situation where the UK market would be the only market with legal certainty,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
obviously favors the domestic market, favors transfers coming into the UK,
yeah,
obviously not transfers coming out of the UK. Um, the situation within the European Union would be extremely diverse. As you mentioned earlier, France has their own set of rules. You know,
mm,
they're it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to react to the ECJ judgment.
yeah,
Germany, depending on the outcome, may have two contradicting
Yeah.
verdicts out there. The smaller countries, the Dutch have a verdict basically favoring the Advocates General position, although it's only a preliminary ruling. The Spanish have one quite like the ones from the United Kingdom. So Brazil, as an outside country, but yet an important football country, has already ruled and has ruled against the fee cap. So basically, you have exactly the opposite of what you want to achieve. You don't have legal certainty. You don't have a common playground, common regulations for all the agents in the world, but you have extreme diversification, which, from my point of view, if that really happens, must lead to one outcome. FIFA then will have to adjust the regulations, and they will have to look at what has happened in all the different markets, and they certainly cannot ignore the ruling in the UK. And I've said that, right? I remember that was I think it was one of the meetings we had in Newcastle a couple
yeah.
of years ago when the ruling came out.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
I basically said, and I'll stand to that, the English ruling has ended the fee cap, period.
yeah, yeah. Well done, England.
Yeah, well,
Well done, England.
Well,
Exactly, yes.
it's another Brexit benefit, as I keep talking about there, Gregor. But Gregor, I mean, we're seeing lots of. It's the season of U-turns politically here in the UK with our
Yeah.
government. Yeah, is there still, in terms of stuff that both parties have still got to play with? Is there anything preventing from FIFA just U-turning like you suggest now? Just U-turning and say, okay, we're gonna completely back off this now for what sounds to me like the good of the game almost.
Well, I mean, what I don't expect FIFA to do is that they will completely back out of this regulations again. It's too much of a pet project for that, and to be honest, we're faced with the market that needs regulations.
yeah,
You know, and the regulations that were in place in the early 2000s actually weren't that bad when you looked at the letter of the law. However, FIFA wrote them down but didn't really care about it. And the key to FAR success is not going to be the question whether or not there's going to be a fee cap in it or not. And I think FIFA is flexible on some of the key issues for the agents on the regulations. The key to success is the questions: is FIFA able to enforce these rules, no matter how they will look at the end? And I think they will look quite similar to what we see now, but some of the biggest issues will be removed, or
yeah. Okay.
at least altered in a way that, let's say, 90, 85, 90% of the agents will be able to live with that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
and I think that's really where these regulations and will have a certain benefit,
yeah,
and where FIFA has a certain benefit to the agents, because what FIFA is afraid of is a domination of the markets by the mega agents. If we have a situation like the United States has, where there's 5 or 6 agents in the NFL, that's sustainable because they have a completely different system. There is no FIFA in the NFL, but in Europe, I think that will be a threat to the game as we know it. FIFA has an interest in having good-sized but many agents.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you make that point, Gregor, and I wasn't expecting to get on this subject today because we've seen a lot of American, US investment and others, of course, in this country's clubs, etc. But some of the smart money has been buying up the agencies. So there's been a massive merger of big agencies.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen Jonathan Barnett retire from Stella. He get an exit. They're bought by an American company. Then they're bought again by a bigger American company who also owns base. So that theme about the mega agents dominating the market. If you've got investors who have clubs and you've got investors or some of the same investors, and the lines are getting more and more blurred with multi-club ownership and all the rest of it. But you have the same investors having the agents as well. It's almost like a virtuous. Are we talking
Yeah.
about cartels again? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, I know what I know what you mean, and that's, I mean, one of the problems with the Americans is that they tend to view Europe through their American cultural eye. They think everything works here as it does there, and especially when it comes to the United Kingdom, because you guys speak the same language,
similar
which
language, similar.
apologies, similar language. Yes, my youngest daughter went to boarding school in England, and she always makes fun of my accent. She says you don't speak proper English.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so and that's one of the problems that might cause, is that they don't see the difference between the US sports model, which from the beginning has been at least when you look at the professional leagues, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, has been a model based on making profit. They view themselves, Roger Goodell actually once said that some time ago, when the NFL first started playing in London, whether or not he was afraid of the competition from the Premier League. And he was bedazzled by the question. He said, "No, my competition doesn't sit in any sports association. My competition is Hollywood." They view themselves as part of the entertainment industry, and that's completely different to our cultural approach. We have football in Europe. I mean, it first played in England, first associated as a club sport in England in the 19th century. The first rules came out of England. It's a bottom to top development, a lot of cultures in there. So if you bring in that perspective of looking at it, saying, all right, it's a great thing, let's make money with that, you can do that, but be aware, part of the reason why football is so successful is because it has a huge cultural approach all over Europe and all over the world, and that's different to American football. And if you don't understand that difference, you may end up ruining your own investment. Yeah,
so you've upset the French. You're not so keen on the Americans. Is there anybody else, Gregor? No. Joking aside, I think.
Well, I'm happy to talk about the Germans.
I think when George Gillette famously sort of said Liverpool is a great franchise, that says everything you needed to know about that particular period. And I think the smart American investors get that. The ones who do get the cultural differences and the ones who understand will be the winners in this, and the other ones will be the losers in this, I think. And whether that's in clubs or in agencies, well, let's see.
Yeah, but I mean, there is the possibility of some jeopardy, some promotion and relegation in the USL. So that hopefully, I mean, look, it's just a better system, isn't it? Having jeopardy. I know we pay the price of competitive balance a little bit, but We've
Yeah.
had a fair bit of competitive balance in the UK in England at least this year.
And
Yeah.
Ryan, just before we go on to the
Mm.
working group, because
Yep.
Gregor's a member of FIFA's football agent working group. Just before we go on to that, our FA, I'm in touch with the guys at the FA. They're going to bring out their own national football agent regulations, a new revised version before the 1st of June. I've got that on good authority. So it'll be the next couple of weeks that hopefully all of you agents who are registered with the FA, and if you're not, we can provide a link for you. Just contact myself or Ryan to register with the FA. So that'll be coming out in the next, well, what are we on now? The 21st. So before the 1st of June, the next sort of 10 days, really. So have a look at that when it lands, because it will be a new updated version. But I don't think there's been that much of a shift. They were probably thinking there'd be more information coming out of the ECJ, and it's just as Gregor has very eloquently described it. It's not really binding, and we have the certainty from that Rule K decision, so that will be in there. So, I've heard an agent says, "Oh, at one of our at our football transfer forum, are we still sticking to the 2.5% in England?" And that's like, well, no, definitely not. That was lower than market rate. We're definitely not sticking to that. And we can also do things like dual rep as well, just as a footnote.
So yeah, moving on to the FIFA agent working group, Gregor. I mean, let us know. Has there been a meeting recently? Is the one coming up? Are there new people on there? What's happening?
The last meeting took place December 2024, so it's about 6 months time. There should be one now, because we hold meetings twice a year, so I'm expecting one to be scheduled fairly soon. But it's probably going to be another online meeting, which I'm not a big fan of. Partly has to do with the fact that the legal department, which is running the agent working group, has moved to Miami. So yeah.
And you fancy a holiday over there?
Well, yeah, I, as you know, Tony, I did live in the US for quite a while, but I've never been a big fan of Florida, let alone Miami.
Really?
So,
Really?
so I would have preferred them to go to the Northwest, but
Yeah.
well, I wasn't asked.
You can't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think in as far as the FIFA agent working group is concerned and its composition, again, FIFA will probably await the outcome of the ECJ decision, as they will with any big reform they're tending to apply to the FAR, which they will. They already said that, but they all want to do it in one big thing, and so I would expect something after the ECJ decision, so late this year or early next year.
Yeah. Gregor, I've got this vision that you've got a FIFA agent working group WhatsApp, and then when the decision was coming through last week, it got pretty busy. I mean, are you guys communicating in between the meetings? I presume. Is there any sort of temperature gauges that you can give us on where people are at?
Yeah, I mean, there is communications going on between the meetings, bilateral between the members of the working group as well as with FIFA. As I said, I was in Zurich at FIFA headquarters last Thursday when the decision popped, and yeah, the discussion as usual got quite heated, but everybody gave their opinion about it. Obviously, the FIFA people loved the Advocate General. The agents weren't as fond of him as FIFA was, but again, it's as you guys said, have that saying in England, and I said that many times last Thursday. Keep calm and carry on. It's really it's nice to have read it, and it's nice to have this guy's opinion, but it doesn't matter. And it's let's wait for, and it's no indication although if you look at it from a statistical point of view, in 9 out of 10 cases, the ECJ follows the Advocate General opinion. However, in the cases they deviate the most, it's when it comes to sports.
Yeah.
So
okay, we'll see.
We'll see. Exactly.
And that group, I mean, are you obviously you know all the members and what have you. It's made up of there's some lawyers, some agents, a variety of people. Are you confident that that group is being heard in FIFA's
yes
HQ? And
yes
you're confident of, you know, because one of the things that we said as an agent, and you know, we're aligned with the European Football Agents Association. They said it, you know, we weren't consulted, and it seemed to me that FIFA should have set up this group 4 years ago, and you guys come up with all of the football agent regulations.
Yeah.
But you know, you've got confidence that it's now it's in play that FIFA will listen.
No, I know that FIFA does listen, because some of the decisions that have been made with concerns to the FAR came directly out of the agent working group, especially the ones when they suspended most of the pending, or most of the regulations most controversial late in 2023. That was a direct outcome of the agent working group meeting in middle of December in Jeddah. Because we had an extremely heated discussion during that meeting, when yet again there was another ruling from Germany bashing FIFA, and I remember when the legal department was asked, now what do you intend to do was concerning the rulings from Germany, from the UK, from Spain. What do you intend to do with the transfer window in January coming up? And the answer from FIFA was, well, we'll wait for the ECJ decision. And basically, most of the members said no. That's the wrong answer. You can't leave the entire industry in limbo for another year or year and a half. You have to decide now. So we were asked then, what would we do? And I immediately said, the only thing that you can do is suspend these regulations, and let's see what happens when the ECJ decides. And then we went on for another 5 or 4 hours. I almost missed my plane. Discussions in the hallway, and 2 weeks later, I get a phone call saying, "Listen, tomorrow we'll publish that, as you requested, these regulations are being suspended." So the agent working group is being heard.
Oh, that's great to know. I mean, I remember we had I think it was just after Christmas, we were getting stuff from the FA, we were getting stuff from FIFA, and then all of a sudden, bang, everything came out, and the window was opening on the 1st of Jan. It was crazy.
Yeah.
The thing is, I do agree with what you said, Ryan, that it should have been established a long time ago, because what the agent working group certainly does create is a certain level of trust among the members. And FIFA knows or understands from in engaging with agent, and not all agents are Al Capone kind of criminals. Actually, most of them are decent, good people. And the agents understand not everybody at FIFA is an Al Capone kind of criminal.
Yeah.
Most of the people that we engage with on the working level are decent people. They understand the issues, and in between lines, they even agree with us. I mean, what we understand, and I've always said that this is in big terms a political issue more than a legal issue, because FIFA for many years has had the upside on the media by saying everything that's evil in the football industry is done by agents.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that's not true. But if as a general public and as a politician who doesn't know much of anything, you hear that year in, year out, you start believing it. and if you are working for FIFA, you hear that year in, year out, you start believing it as well. So finally engaging with one another, you find out like, wait a minute, they aren't that bad. And that's, I think, what is really necessary. And I agree, Ryan, if that would have been established many, many years ago, the outcome probably would have been that we all agree, yeah, we need to do something when it comes to regulations. Let's sit down, let's do it together, let's formulate something that we can all sign off to. And that's, again, I've been saying that for years. I mean, these agent regulations are not the 10 commandments. They don't have to hold for another 2,000 years. Let's write them down. Let's look at them. Let's analyze them. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work, and then let's change what doesn't work, and let's enforce, or let's build better on what works. And that's what needs to happen. And due to the legal cases, we are in a situation where we are now all waiting for the ECJ, and I'm hoping that once the ECJ rules, and I am certain that they will not follow the Advocate General opinion, that we then be able to sit down, well, probably not only with the agent working group, but also with various stakeholders from the agent business, and come up with something that is finally good and solid for the agent business.
Yeah, you missed such a good opportunity to say Darth Vader rather than Al Capone. Then you could have kept that. You could have kept that. You could have kept that going. Gregor, just two very, very quick questions from me before we let you go. I just wanted your opinion on the agent exam being online, and what you think about the realities of that, and the pros and the cons, and has anything been discussed about opening up the agent exam to include other languages as well? Because one thing that me and Tony constantly can't get our head around is Elon Musk is going to have us all living on Mars in 10 years' time, but we can't have all the languages for the FIFA agent exam.
Well, yeah, I mean, on that, I would be happy if Elon Musk would live on Mars in 10 days' time, all by himself. That would be, I think, that would be a good start.
I tell you what, Gregor, you're in a mood today, aren't you?
I know. Yeah.
Come on, Gregor, let it out.
Big targets. You some big targets.
Yeah, I'll probably be banned from entering the US again, at least for the next 4 years. Anyways, yes, the online exam I think it's actually, considering the logistic that are behind it, and considering the fact that FIFA has 202 member associations, of which not all are on the same level as the UK, and I've heard you guys had some problems last time with the exams, or Germany, which has constant problems. So I think it's in general it's a good thing. I mean, if you look at and it was another example, by the way, for something that was brought up from the agent working group, because there was the argument raised that if you sit in Brazil, which is a huge country just by size, I mean, you have to travel 3 or 4 days to I think the exam was held in Rio de Janeiro, to Rio, when depending on where you live in the country, just to take the exam. So in the 21st century, I think such an exam should be held online. Yeah. The question of a language is another question, and as you can imagine, it's an extremely heated debate in Germany, because which it probably wouldn't have been prior to the World Cup in Qatar, where we were still an official FIFA language, and then our Ministry of the Interior wore that funny one love thing around their arm while sitting next to Infantino. Boom! Next day, we're no longer an official language of FIFA. Which is why the Germans are extremely, at least the German agents are extremely in favor of opening up the exam for other languages, and have petitioned the German Football Association, but they aren't the quickest when it comes to doing anything. But yeah, I agree. I mean, we're living in the 21st century. We have AI, we have instant translation on the internet, and I think in a case like that, we should be capable of presenting these exams in at least all the major languages that the world has. And the argument FIFA always raises, yeah, but you can go online and while online doing the exam and AI translate. That doesn't work in an exam situation. Plus all the preparation, which contains 800 some pages, is all in English or Spanish or French, which is kind of like difficult then to learn in English and then take an exam in German or Italian or whatever. And finally, I think that's a big legal issue because if you need a license, and I've said that to FIFA as well. In some thought, it invalidates the license. If you do need a license, which I'm in favor of, that an agent should have a license to do his job. But then please give everybody who wants to do this the chance to take the exam in their own language. I mean, you are advertising yourself as the one global sport. You're moving parts of your departments to all places of the world. Well, yeah, the world unfortunately comes with, I don't know, 150 different languages. Learn to live with that. Get it done, and they can done, and that's I fully agree. It should be, and I think it would take also a lot of heat out of the debate if FIFA would do that.
Brilliant. Gregor, listen, absolutely fantastic. So I'm glad that we got you in this little niggle that you're in today. It was brilliant. It was great. Tony, any words to Gregor before we let him go?
Yeah, no, thank you, Gregor. That's made things so much more clearer for me and hopefully all the guys as well. And I know you'll be busy in the summer transfer window, so hopefully it won't be long before we see each other again in this country or in yours.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. Apologies to all the French and to all the Americans, with the exception of members of the Trump administration. Good luck on your endeavor. I think it's brilliant that there is a new agent association out there in the UK and in Ireland. Makes things easier for us continental Europeans.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
Thanks for that.
And Gregor, and may the force be with you.
And with you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
That was fantastic there, Tony.
Yeah,
some really good insight.
Do you know what? I'm so pleased that he's a great guy. You can just see from how he talks, but I've got more confidence now in the working group and how FIFA are going to do things going forward. It's a bit like the cart before the horse, but at least we've got the cart on the horse now, and the agents are involved, and people like Gregor can help it to be better. Just on one thing on the agents exam, you've got to have passed it to be like operating as an agent now, and if you are working towards it, good luck on it. It's the 18th of June worldwide. I think they're allowing German actually they're allowing people to do it in German now, which obviously Gregor's on that group, so he's helped push that forward. But yeah, if you're doing the exam, the other thing, Ryan, that has come out of FIFA that I quite liked was this. There was a FIFA ethical recruitment guide. I saw this. I think maybe a couple of years ago, I did a webinar with the people from Mission 89, and they're a group that are helping. It's worth checking out Mission 89 online. And they're a group that are supporting people who've been trafficked, who have been brought into Europe as sports people and sometimes dumped by unscrupulous operators. So they're quite an important organization. I think they've had a lot of input with FIFA to design this FIFA guide to ethical recruitment. And is it 40 or 80-page document? It's worth a read. I mean, it's just to sort of take note. Or I think all the guys who operate in this country, I don't think we've had a major problem. But Mission 89, we're talking about scenarios where an agent would take a player from Africa, bring to a trial in Belgium, and also, around Paris, clubs around Paris, it was very prevalent. And if the trial went well, great, let's get a deal done. If the trial didn't, there was no return ticket. The agent was then not answering the phone, and they were just left in the middle of Belgium, France, or wherever. And that was becoming an issue. And it wasn't just in football, it was in other sports as well. So that, they were trying to, advocate and support some of the people who were in that trap, but also they've been advising FIFA on these rules for ethical recruitment.
Yeah, I've put that in the chat along with the ECJ
It's a guide. It's not something you need to know for the exam, but it's just a guide that I think is useful. And I don't want us to FIFA bash all the time, but everyone's got to do the CPD. I found the CP, once you've got your agent's license and you've got it, you've still got to do 2 or 3 pieces of CPD to get your points. I found them quite interesting. I don't know why you wouldn't do them. You've got to do them to maintain your license. And I just think, that's one of the good things that FIFA have done.
Cool. Okay. Let's move things on, Tony.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the summer transfer windows plural, Ryan. We've got Pete O'Rourke. Pete and I did a nice series of webinars in a transfer window, just talking about things that are going to happen, how it's going to look. And Pete works as a journalist. He's a class act. He's very much on that sort of transfers, what's happening, which clubs are going to be busy, and that type of thing. He's very much got his finger on the pulse when it comes to transfers. So hi Pete, how are you?
I'm good, Tony. How are you? Hi, Ryan.
Yeah, really good. So what we're going to do for the next sort of 20 minutes to half an hour, let's see how it goes. We're just going to talk with Pete about the summer transfer windows, Pete. There's 2 of them.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. We've got an early window this year, June the 3rd to June the 10th, and that's because of this new Club World Cup, just to allow the clubs that are participating in this sort of highly criticized tournament in America to sign some players for that. Obviously, we've seen Real Madrid have already signed Dean Huijsen from Bournemouth, so he will be allowed to play for Real Madrid in that tournament as well. It'll be interesting to see if they get a deal done for Trent Alexander-Arnold as well before his contract expires on June 30th at Liverpool. But yeah, we've got 2 windows and an early finish on deadline day as well. So it's not the 11 o'clock traditional late finish at the end of August. It is going to be a 7 o'clock finish across Europe, which is probably nice for most people who work at clubs, because normally on deadline day, they're there till the small hours of the morning, doing the paperwork. So yeah, 2 windows. I think we'll see a bit of activity in the first one from the 3rd to the 10th. Then it closes for 6 days, and then it's back open from June 16th until the end of August. But yeah, expecting a busy transfer window across Europe, really. I think a lot of clubs will be in the market, so we expect a lot of movement.
Yeah, Tony and I have been speaking about it quite regularly over the last couple of weeks. Pete, I can't remember a situation going into a transfer window where almost every team, you could say, either they've got a lot of players leaving or they need to replenish. And do you think a lot of that has been fueled by, I guess, the real poor performance of tonight's Europa League finalists? In fact, I had put together a slide just for this one, just for my own ills, because because obviously, the man there is going to be he's going to be hot property, and of course earmarked to go to Man United. But my point is that every team seems to have so much going on.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Ryan. I think a lot of clubs need to do a lot of surgery to their squads, especially the two that are in this Europa League final tonight. Won't be great news for the loser because they're going to miss out on the riches of the Champions League money, where they could then go out and spend big money to maybe improve their squads. Obviously, Manchester United, it seems, have got this deal wrapped up for Matheus Cunha from Wolves already. They will pay that 62.5 million release clause in his contract. That'll be spread over a number of installments just to help with PSR and FFP, etc. But look, if Tottenham don't win this Europa League final tonight, I think their rebuilding job is going to be massive. Probably a new manager as well on top of that. So yeah, look, the loser tonight could end up seeing a number of players leave, and it's going to make it really difficult then to entice new signings to make that move if you don't have Champions League football on offer, because all the top players, they want to be playing at Europe's premier competition, and one of these teams is going to miss out, and it's going to probably set them back.
Yeah, so just to come in there, as you know, Pete, I'm a big Wolves fan, and sad to see Cunha go because I think he's a top player. Um, it's a strange one, isn't it? In many ways, I'm surprised that it looks like he's going to Man United because they're not very good. So obviously, is your understanding that this deal is dependent on him winning tonight, or it's not, or
Yeah, I don't think tonight's result will have any major bearing on it. It does seem that Matheus Cunha has decided that he wants to go to United. Obviously, they have struggled this season. There's no getting away from that. Their form has been disastrous in the Premier League, but there's still a big, enticing proposition for players. They've got all that history. Obviously, Ruben Amorim's coming in with his new project. I think he's played a big part in convincing Cunha to maybe snub interest from elsewhere to make the move to United. And he does seem the type of player who will fit into the style of play that he wants to play. He wants these two number 10s and then a forward number 9 as well. And Cunha can play either as that number 9, or I think he's better as a wide attacking forward as a number 10 as well. So, yeah, disappointing for Wolves fans that he's leaving. Obviously, he signed that new contract after all that speculation linking him with a move in the January window to Arsenal and other clubs. But look, it's a good deal for everybody involved. I think Wolves get a good fee for him, 62.5 million, that release clause. It's a good move for Man United as well, getting a player who I think will definitely improve them. Yeah, obviously.
And Pete, we're usually kind of like waiting for the first domino to fall, aren't we? But it seems with this Cunha one that like the first domino is going to fall pretty quick. So do you think we're going to see a sort of regularity of activity through the window as well, rather than it all kind of being towards the end, or?
Yeah, well, you would hope that clubs are sort of learning lessons from not doing all their business too late. This should be more proactive, try and get things done early. I think especially if you look at the newly promoted clubs to the Premier League, I think it's essential that they try and get their business done early just to help sort of bolster their squads and to make sure that they can sign their top targets, because if other clubs come in for them, the likelihood is they'll go to clubs who are more established in the Premier League. There's quite a few deals, a bit like Cunha, that look like they're all pretty much wrapped up, ready to be announced. Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad to Arsenal, again, looks like it's a done deal that will get announced at the end of the season. It's a deal, again, similar to Cunha. He's got a release clause in his contract, which Arsenal are ready to activate. So that looks another deal that's done. And then Jeremy Frimpong looks like he's swapping the Bundesliga to return to the Premier League. The former Manchester City youngster is all but done at Liverpool, and he will become Liverpool's first signing of the summer and seen as a replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold in that right back position for Arne Slot.
So Pete, I mean, let's just go back a step. We've got Chelsea and Man City in this World Club Cup, and they've got their own special window opening up for that. We've got a Europa Cup final for Spurs and Man United. Then we've got the crescendo of the final game of the Premier League on Sunday, when all of the Champions League slots are up for grabs and the Europa League, Conference League, etc. Plus, added to that, we've got all of the playoff games for those third places for the next person to get. We've got Sunderland against Sheffield United. I'm just trying to remember who's in the other playoff games, but we've got all of those playoff games that are going to dictate one club's up and one club stays where they are. So that'll obviously change perspective quite a bit. And sort of let's start with the Premier League puzzle, if you like. And look, the last couple of windows, I think there's been lots of clubs who've gone, oh, we can't do much for PSR reasons. There was also then the the transfer of players from one club to another that hit PSR rules. So how are you seeing? Let's start with the Premier League before we go on to other leagues, and not forgetting the SPL as well. How are you seeing things in the Premier League then? Who is going to be the busiest clubs, and what do you think?
Yeah, I'm expecting a really busy window in the Premier League. That's where the money is. They've got all these big clubs have got the finances to go out and make these big signings. PSR and FFP has been a concern, as you mentioned, Tony. In the last summer transfer window, we saw a few dealings to get round the rules of PSR with the swap deals. Aston Villa would be an interesting one to keep an eye on. I think they're sort of on the fringes of FFP and PSR. A lot of talk that they might have to sort of balance the books and sell a few players. Lots of talk that Emiliano Martinez could be offloaded. We saw his reaction on the final home game of the season on Friday night against Tottenham when he was in tears. So that does signal that maybe he could be on the move. A lot of interest in him from the Saudi Pro League. Also, talk of Manchester United, Chelsea, and Atletico Madrid all being interested in Martinez, who is a top performer. Got to remember he's won the world's best goalkeeper twice, helped Argentina win the World Cup, and again he would be a big loss for Villa. And I think there'll be other clubs who'll be looking at Villa right now, thinking, can we maybe snap up some of their players if they are struggling with FFP and PSR? Unfortunately, it happened to Newcastle in last summer window when they reluctantly had to offload Yankuba Minta to Brighton. Elliot Anderson went to Nottingham Forest as well. Eddie Howe didn't want to lose those two players, but he had to do it to help balance the books. Howe's been quite bullish this time, I think, saying they don't really find themselves in that situation for this summer transfer window. If Newcastle can qualify for the Champions League, that will be a huge boost to their finances and be able to keep hold of their best players, because we know there's no doubts in this summer window there will be speculation about Alexander Isak's long-term future, Bruno Gomes, there'll be interest in him as well, and Anthony Gordon as well. I think there'll be clubs might be looking at his situation to see if he could be prized away. So we know PSR FFP is not going away. We've got at least another year of it before those UEFA spending rules come in as well. So clubs got to be wary not to be spending beyond their means, because they don't want to be getting points deductions. We've seen where the latest news on Leicester, they look like they're going to have a points deduction heading into the Championship next season, and that's not part life outside the Premier League with a potential points deduction.
Yeah, and talking about Leicester, have you heard any Vardy rumours?
Yeah, I think obviously real sad news for Leicester fans to see Jamie Vardy leave.
What are you going to say, Real Madrid then?
No, don't think Real Madrid will be in for Jamie Vardy.
Yeah.
They've got enough strikers on their books, I think. Mbappe and Vinny Jr. But obviously Jamie Vardy's setting the stall out. He wants to stay in the Premier League. Obviously he's at 39 now. Yeah. I think he could still do a job for at least a season. So I think there will be interest in him. I have heard Wolves ran as one club possibly for Jamie Vardy, and also Crystal Palace. The FA Cup winners have been doing a bit of due diligence on Vardy as well to see if he could come in and maybe do a season for them. You got to remember, Palace are going to have a lot more games next year. They've got European football to contend with for the first time ever, so that's going to stretch their squad. So maybe Jamie Vardy, with his experience, his goal scoring, he could be a smart signing by Steve Parish and Crystal Palace, because, as I said, maybe he's not going to be a regular wherever he does move to, but he definitely could be an impact player off the bench.
So basically, everyone's going to be busy in the Prem.
Yeah, I think so.
And what about Leeds? Like this is Big Jack lifting the FA Cup in the early 70s. So what about Leeds? How are they going to approach it? Because there's been talk about Rangers being part of the same sort of. There's some. I think the Red Bull Red Bull link for Leeds is more in sponsorship terms. I don't think that they're a club that's in the Red Bull group, so to speak. I think it's more a commercial arrangement. But what about that Rangers? What will Leeds do? Because me and Ryan saw them down at Watford, blew Watford away. They've got some lovely attacking players that kept the ball well. How will Leeds approach the Prem?
Yeah, I think they'll give it a go. Obviously we know they've got a huge history. Leeds United, Elland Road is going to be key for them this season to have any chance of staying up. But you look at the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League; it's getting bigger and bigger. So you got to spend money to have any chance. But even then, that's no guarantee either. Because Ipswich last season spent quite a bit of money, and they ended up going there straight back down to the Championship. But I think under the 49ers enterprises, Leeds ownership are showing a lot of ambition. They've decided to stick with Daniel Farke and give him that chance in the Premier League when there was a few doubts that he would continue in his job after winning promotion. I believe they have got a healthy budget for this summer transfer window in excess of £100 million. But it's how you spend that £100 million that's the key. I think there will be a lot of new signings at Leeds United, and there'll also be a lot of players leaving as well. But right now, if you looked at the Leeds squad, it does need a bit of help if they are to have any chance of staying up. So I think needed probably the spine of the team, needs strengthening, a new goalkeeper, new centre back, central midfield, and then everybody's precious commodity, a number 9 striker who can score goals in the top flight, because that's what hurt Leeds last time when they were in the Premier League under Marcelo Bielsa. They just didn't have a regular goal scorer, and I think bringing somebody like experienced striker who can score goals will go a long way to boosting Leeds' chances of staying up. It's going to be hard. There's no getting away from it. As I said, it's getting bigger and bigger, the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League. But I think the Leeds owners are ambitious, and I think they will give Daniel Farke every chance to try and keep Leeds up and consolidate the Premier League. And then, as I said, it's exciting times for Rangers as well, with 49ers Enterprises getting close to a takeover there. So light at the end of the tunnel for Rangers, as it's been a difficult few years on and off the pitch. So yeah, 49ers Enterprises, they've impressed me with what they've done at Leeds. So I think that would give encouragement to Rangers fans as well.
Yeah, and Kevin Thirlwell has joined Rangers as sporting director, and he's a good operator that's operated in some Ryan's club as well as Everton, and so I think he'll be a good person to have in in terms of recruiting for the summer, in terms of stabilizing the squad and pushing it forward. But again, up in Scotland, it's usually the Celtic and Rangers. I've seen that there's been more investment in Hibs and Hearts. Aberdeen had a really flying start to the season and then went a little bit awry. But what's your thoughts on the SPL?
Yeah, we know that Celtic and Rangers are the big two up there in Scotland. Obviously, Celtic have won the last 4 Scottish Premiership titles, and they are the team to catch. There's no doubt about that. Every time they're in the Champions League, it just helps bolster their coffers. And obviously, they've had a lot of success bringing in players and then selling them on for huge fees as well. So it keeps them in the balance books and the balance sheets looking pretty healthy. I think one to watch will be Hearts. Coming up this year. Obviously, they've got a new manager in Derek McInnes and new minority owner in the Brighton owner, Tony Bloom, who's had so much success at Brighton, become one of the smartest, probably recruitment operators in world football, probably buying sort of unknown players for relatively cheap prices and then selling them on for huge profits as well. So if they can repeat, Tony Bloom can repeat that success for Hearts, to really give them a chance of sort of closing the gap.
Yeah,
Rangers and Celtic.
It's quite a shrewd move going for Hearts, because I don't think it's going to take a massive amount of money to get up there and compete for second, third, even first place in Scotland. We're not talking about the same sort of numbers you need to, that a championship club would need. Like you're saying, 100 million for Leeds to compete. It's in relative terms, it's probably going to be a lot less to be able to compete in Scotland. And I think it's a shrewd move from Tony Bloom.
Yeah, very shrewd move. As I said, had so much success At Brighton, obviously, it's all data-driven decisions with the Jamestown Analytics group that does all the recruitment for Brighton. That's going to be used at Hearts as well. So, as I said, if they can have half the success they've had at Brighton, it can only be good news for Hearts. And like you said, obviously Celtic and Rangers are the big superpowers in Scotland, but obviously Hearts are going to try and be smart and go down the data-driven angle and see if they can sign some gems in the transfer window, which will improve their squad and obviously make them a bit more competitive against Celtic and Rangers.
Yeah, Pete, what are you hearing about the next Rangers manager? Because it seems odds on that it's going to be Gerrard. I saw an interview with Barry Ferguson at the weekend. It wasn't a great result at the weekend for him, although they did score a goal that went about 3 meters over the line that got disallowed. Does it look like they'll have that Ferguson won't be the manager and they're going to bring somebody else in?
Yeah, it's been confirmed that Barry Ferguson won't be staying on as manager. Obviously, stepped in a difficult situation and tried to steady the ship as best he could. Home form was probably a big concern for the new Rangers ownership that are going in there. They need to get the fans back in at Ibrox, packing the place out to have any chance of catching Celtic. Gerrard obviously would be the obvious choice. He's been there before and he's had success at Rangers, helping them win the title to stop Celtic winning that historical 10 in a row. So then he went down to Aston Villa where it didn't really work out for him. The other interesting name is Davide Ancelotti, who obviously Carlo's son, very highly regarded coach, did seem to do a lot of the work at Real Madrid on the training ground, with Carlo then doing the man management and picking the team. But he's coming with a huge CV. Does look like he wants to become a manager in his own right. That would be a sort of interesting choice by Rangers if they were able to lure him to Ibrox, because he would bring a lot of ideas and it would be something different and outside the box for Rangers if they went for him rather than Gerrard, who's been there before, knows the club. And I just think for Rangers right now, I think they need to do something different if they are to sort of close the gap on Celtic. So going for somebody like Ancelotti, who obviously has worked under his dad at so many huge clubs, would be a gamble, but it could be a gamble that could pay off, because if he comes in and transforms Rangers, you've got a real massive club who can compete for silverware and also do well in Europe, which they have done in the last few years.
Excellent. Tony?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Pete. What about let's talk about the Championship then now. What are your thoughts on, obviously, Sunderland and Sheffield United are fighting for that final spot. Are you thinking the three clubs that come down are going to be dominant? They're going to spend. Who are the ones to look out for? And obviously, we've got a couple of, looking at the clubs that are coming up as well.
Yeah. I think the Championship's going to be very competitive this year, as it always is. Obviously, the three clubs that get relegated from the Premier League have an advantage over the rest of the opposition with these parachute payments. That's why we've seen those teams that go down always automatically challenging for promotion straight back to the Premier League. Southampton's going to be an interesting one, I think. Looks like Will Still is going to be the new manager there at Southampton, having left Lens in France. It will be interesting to see how he gets on in English football. Very highly rated young coach. Southampton, I think, have got a decent squad if they can keep the majority of it. And if Still can get off to a good start, you'd expect them to be right up there. Leicester City, we mentioned about them briefly, maybe having a points deduction going into next season because of PSR and FFP. Again, lots of sort of flux at Leicester right now. We don't know who the manager is going to be. It looks like Ruud van Nistelrooy will be leaving, and then we don't know what their finances are going to be like with FFP and PSR. And then Ipswich, probably for me, look the best bet. It looks like they're going to keep Kieran McKenna as head coach, and for me, he's been there, done it, got promotion twice with Ipswich before going up to the Premier League, and it does seem they will keep the majority of their squad, or they're confident that it'll keep them, because it looks like Liam Delap will be one of the probably only players to leave Portman Road, and that's due to that release clause in his contract. But look, the Championship's going to be one to watch next year, because we've got the high-profile duo of Birmingham City and Wrexham in there as well. And look, we know Birmingham City spent heavily to get promotion from League One, spending a lot of money on the likes of Jay Stansfield. I expect them to be really aggressive in the transfer market. I think they'll spend big transfer fees and offer big wages to players to try and make an impact. My understanding is they feel they can do what Ipswich did win back-to-back promotions straight up to the Premier League. So they think we win League One, we can go up next season in the Championship and make an impact and win promotion again. While Wrexham, with everything that surrounds them, with the documentary, the American owners, I expect them to be competitive as well, and they will spend money for sure. I think probably 30 million plus budget at least on transfers. They've even been linked with Tom Kearney from Fulham, which is a very ambitious signing if they could lure him. But look, Wrexham's an attractive club to a lot of players now because of everything that goes around the club, the hype, the sort of the PR around it. So yeah, I expect Birmingham and Wrexham sort of to make an impact in that Championship. And then, as you said, whoever loses that playoff final at the weekend, you would expect them to be up there as well. But look, I think the Championship is probably the most competitive league in Europe, and that's even with the clubs who get the parachute payments, and it's the most unpredictable league as well. EFL, so much drama, as we saw in that playoff semi-final between Sunderland and Coventry, with Sunderland getting that dramatic late winner as well. That summed up everything that football supporters enjoy. Maybe not Coventry fans because they were at the sort of wrong end of that result. But yeah, Championship, there will be money spent there. I think there is some big budgets going to be in that league next season.
Yeah, and there was a few big clubs went down to League One as well.
Yeah, League One will be another busy one as well. I think we've seen a lot of clubs obviously go down from the Championship as well. Some managed to escape it with by the skin of their teeth as well, which is huge to them. I think you got to look. I've heard there will be a lot of money spent in League One next year, which is probably surprising to a lot of people. I've heard some of those clubs that have been locked in the Championship for a few years now are finding money to go and try and sign the best players. Bolton have got a decent budget. Wigan, who have been in the Premier League before as well, they're going to have a decent budget. And Leyton Orient, who are under new American ownership, if they don't go up through the playoffs in that final against Charlton, they will be very competitive as well. So League One, to me, next year probably looks the most open league to call right now. Anybody could go and win it. And as I said, I think the three teams that have gone down from the Championship, they'll be hoping to be right up there as well. But I think it's wide open to me with the budgets that are seemingly available.
Yeah, and also the Reading of new ownership as well.
Yeah, well, it's great news for everyone connected.
It's fantastic news.
It's such a tough time for them. So yeah, real light at the end of the tunnel for Reading, and I think they'll be right up there as well.
And he was the owner of Wycombe, wasn't it? Did he sell Wycombe? I mean, Wycombe's under new ownership, well, relatively new ownership, and they'll be strong in that league again, won't they?
Yeah, Wycombe obviously just narrowly missed out in the playoff semi-finals this time. They're very data-driven now as well with their transfer approach. Dan Rice, who's formerly at Everton, is leading everything at Wycombe. And as you said, Tony, got very ambitious owners who will put their hands in their pockets to sort of fund a major transfer spree this summer. Again, a lot of it will be data-driven. And that seems to be a successful route that most clubs are looking at these days, to data-driven recruitment.
Yeah, and going down to League Two and maybe touching on a little bit of National League, Pete. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, again, League Two. I've heard some interesting things that the MK Dons are going to have a huge budget, almost signing players on Championship wages, which again, there's going to be a lot of money floating around that league. I think if MK Dons are spending that type of money, they are going to be pretty strong, and they'll be hoping that they can win promotion. Salford, again, under this new ownership after the David Beckham and Gary Neville bringing a consortium together, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. They've obviously been trying to replicate what Wrexham have done, moving up the leagues. It hasn't sort of happened for them over the last 4 seasons where they've found themselves stuck in League Two, but I'm sure they'll be having ambitious plans to try and make that final step up and reach League One as well. And then I think there's a lot of big clubs down there as well. Notts County, obviously missing out in the League Two playoffs. They'll be hoping to bounce back. And then, as I said, we'll see who doesn't make it this weekend in that final with Wimbledon trying to reach League One again.
Is it Wimbledon-Walsall?
Wimbledon-Walsall. Obviously, we know Walsall had that huge around January time and sort of threw it away in the end. But look, I think they'll be delighted if they could win promotion via the playoffs on Bank Holiday Monday. They won't care about throwing away that 12-point lead as long as they're in League One.
Yeah, and let's just before we finish this particular section, let's just touch base on um, the women's game, the WSL. You know, they had the first $1 million transfer of a woman player into Chelsea in the January window. Are you getting across the women's game a little bit more, Pete, or?
Yeah, it's becoming more prevalent, and there's no doubt about that. There is more money being spent in the women's game right now, more big money transfers as well, as you just mentioned there, Tony. Obviously, Chelsea are the dominant force in the
Yeah,
WSL, winning
yeah,
the treble this year. They are the team to catch, and obviously they've had new investment as well from Serena Williams's husband as well, I think. So look, they're just going to get stronger and stronger. Arsenal are obviously in the Champions League final as well. They've had a good season in Europe. If they could win that, that would be a huge boost to them. And obviously we've had the likes of Manchester United and Manchester City, who obviously City have missed out in the Champions League this year in the women's game, which is a big blow to them. But I'd expect both of those teams to spend in the summer
and
window to try and strengthen their squads and try and put a challenge up to Chelsea next season.
yeah, and from my point of view, up here, Newcastle have really supported the women's team tremendously now. And you know, they had 35,000 there to watch at St James's to watch the derby against Sunderland, which was a fantastic day, and it was a real statement of intent, you know, getting that sort of figure of supporters in the championship, and you know they'll be wanting to push, you know, right as far as they can go at the top of the league. So they, you know, they'll be looking at, you know, a number of new players that can get them there. So it's a really interesting time. I just me and Ryan were talking before. It was just Blackburn Rovers and Wolves have had like pulled the plug on the women's teams, which for me just seems crazy. You know, I mean, a lot of the agents now have we've got some new agents coming in and working in the women's game, and that's great to see. We've got some of the big companies having an agent's arm at a particular department that's, you know, also great to see. So, you know, it's sort of contradictory. The mood music's rising, and look, it's great for us as agents if there's players there who are earning decent money and they can have a decent length of professional contract. What's your thoughts on that, Pete?
Yeah, obviously it's all coming down to finances, why they've got these
Mm.
issues at Blackburn and Wolves. Disappointing for the players involved who are hoping that they could make that step up into the professional game.
Yeah,
Look, it'll be hard to compete with the big clubs. Chelsea have got so much finances in the women's team. Manchester United, Manchester City, Arsenal are all probably head and shoulders above the rest of the team. So closing that gap's going to be hard. You
mm,
just be hoping that these clubs that are involved with the women's teams can offer some more funding and finances to them, because we don't want to see these teams fold and go under, really, because that's
yeah.
going to leave a lot of people disappointed. And the women's game is just getting bigger and bigger. You don't want to see teams fall by the wayside, really.
Yeah, and just one to mention a very last couple really. TNS in Wales again qualifying for, you know, winning the league over there and qualifying for a Champions League qualification, I think, and they're getting stronger every year.
Yeah, obviously they've had traditional success in Wales, winning the league. Qualifying for Europe is key for TNS. If they are to continue
Mm,
to make
mm,
improvements, that will bring in extra finance and help encourage the players to maybe make that move to TNS to get European football under their belt as well. But yeah, they've been a great advert for Welsh football by flying the flag in European football, along with some of the other Welsh teams as well. Look, but TNS, again, they're at a position of strength. They ended up selling their striker last summer to the Saudi Arabia for big well.
amazing
So
deal. Yeah,
who would have thought
yeah,
that would have happened a few
yeah,
years ago, that Saudi Arabian clubs will be coming shopping in the Welsh football league, trying to sign their players as well. But that just shows that
yeah.
clubs are doing some good work and recruiting players who maybe haven't made the grade elsewhere and giving them that opportunity to play.
And that's a great segue into the Saudi Pro League, Pete. Is that going to be, you know, they had a bit of a blast and like let's sign a few players, let's put some big transfer fees in, and then it sort of went a bit quiet. What are you hearing from that part of the world?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a busy one in the Saudi Pro League. I think, as you said, January was really quiet for the Saudi Pro League, but I think there's a new sort of recruitment policy and strategy now with the Saudi Pro League that they're trying to sign younger players rather than signing maybe older players who are coming to the end of their careers. They want to sign players that they can bring in at a good age, develop, which will help develop the league as well. Because that's not going away, the Saudi Pro League. Remember, the World Cup's going to be there in a few years, so they'll want that league to be as strong as possible. Again, there'll be disappointment within the Saudi Pro League that they haven't managed to sign Mohamed Salah, and that would have been the marquee signing for them this summer if they could have got him on a free from Liverpool before he ended up signing a new deal at Anfield. But look, those big clubs, the Al Hilals, Al Nassers, they've got unlimited funds. They will be out there threatening some of those big clubs in Europe for some of the biggest signings. And I do think there'll be some big name arrivals in the Saudi Pro League in this summer window.
Yeah, great. Anything from you, Ryan?
Nope.
That's fantastic, Pete. Thank you so much for that. You've gone through a lot of clubs, a lot of leagues. Obviously, it's going to be a busy summer. I can see it being a record-breaking summer actually in terms of transfers and the numbers of players that are changing clubs this summer. Just the whole environment and the whole the Champions League extra slots, the clubs that are coming up trying to compete. And then those players where there's been investment, those clubs where there's been investment from the US and other places that are really, trying to push up the leagues.
Yeah, that's going to be action-packed, I think, this transfer window. As you said, everybody's trying to close the gap on their rivals, and there's huge investment now in the Premier League. As you said, so many American owners of clubs as well. We saw what Todd Bowley's done at Chelsea, spent over £1 billion in a few transfer windows as well. And again, I think with clubs looking instant success these days rather than building, that's why the demand for money to be spent and transfers to be made.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks so much, Pete. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you soon.
All right, guys. No worries. Catch up soon.
Cheers.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all pans out, Tony.
Yeah.
Tony, I'm just gonna share a slide because we're just going to speak about really if anybody has got any questions that they would want us to speak to the national associations about. Do you want to say a few words on that, Tony?
Yeah, I mean the Q&A box is open there. Please put any questions in there. But I often get asked, agents ring me up and say, "Oh, what do you think about this? Can you give us a bit of advice on that?" And sometimes it's the best advice is coming from the national governing body. So what we want to do as an association is, if you have got some questions, and like I said, we've had people on from the English FA, Scottish FA, I think there's somebody from the Irish FA last time. If you have got any questions that are burning questions that you're unsure about as an agent, then now's the time to put them in the Q&A box. We'll make a note of those, or Ryan, can you make a note of any of those questions? Or indeed, I'll send out a recording of this second meeting to everybody, and you've got my email, you've got Ryan's email. If you want to stick it on an email, if it comes to you after today, if you want to stick it on an email, or you're having a certain issue that you might need help with, then what we are planning to do is to drop an email into the FA and to follow it up for you, and then we can report back either directly on email or in another meeting, because your issue might be the same issue that somebody else is having, or the same question that somebody else has got in their mind. So you've got a couple of minutes before the end, you've got quite a bit of time before the end. If you have got a burning question for any of the member associations, and Ryan had them up there on the screen. Look, we haven't really talked much about Ireland and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but we want to include everybody in our association. And I know me and Ryan are planning a visit to Northern Ireland later in the year, which we may do one of these meetings. It'd be great to do one from Ireland, wouldn't it? And we can move them around the country as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Well, we're edging into the latter stages of the meeting, Tony, and I think we're going to take the opportunity to bring is Andy with us?
Yeah, we're gonna hear from Andy Watson. He's from up north as well. It's a very northern show. We've had northern Germany. Pete's lives around Harrogate, so it's a very northern uh, show. We've got Andy Watson, who's from the GBE Expert Hub. And to be fair, we've done quite a lot of work with Andy over recent weeks and months. And it's the question that I get asked most by usually agents abroad, but also some agents in this country. And it's one of the mistakes some new agents make where they might have a player that they're trying to promote in this country who doesn't get in for eligibility reasons. Obviously, after Brexit, there was the Home Office and the FA produced some, and I don't think it was just the FA. I think other FAs were involved. Produced some guidance on how what you need to have done to be able to come and work as a professional footballer in this country. So we're just going to talk to Andy for the next sort of 20 minutes. Hello, Andy. How's things with you?
Hi, Tony. How are you? Yeah, really good. Thank you.
And you've just come off the school drop off, I understand.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's familiar to a lot of people on the call. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a young family. We've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then I'm expecting another one next month. So it's
Oh, yeah,
quite a busy household at the moment. But thankfully everything's progressing nicely with the pregnancy. I know, obviously,
yeah,
Tony, we spoke, was it Monday? Yeah, we were on Monday, weren't we, doing
yeah,
a session about ESC, which I
yeah.
think is going to be very relevant during the summer window. I was listening to Pete there, and he didn't specifically touch on foreign recruitment, but I could see by a lot of the things he was talking about, there is going to be a lot of foreign recruitment going on in the domestic game. But everyone's got to be very much aware of the GBE and the ESC rules. They've got to stick
Mm.
by those. We are awaiting kind of an update from the FA on those because the last 2 Mays, so May 2024 and 2023, there've been updates on the legislation. But obviously, those people who keep across governmental procedure will have seen that there's been a lot of negotiation between the UK and the EU around certain immigration policy. And I wonder whether the FA are obviously waiting on guidance from the Home Office and seeing what comes off the back of that before there's any changes that they want to publish.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
never thought about that. And I know my son was talking about this sort of 18 to 30 age bracket where the movement was going to be relaxed a little bit. You were able to move freely. And I'd never thought about it in terms of football players, and that could really accelerate the marketplace even more, Andy.
Yeah, I've been looking into it like earnestly because it's part of what I'm specializing in, and they
Mm.
haven't mentioned sport in any way specifically. But what they are saying is like people who want to work, young people who want to work in certain sectors, either from the UK going into the EU or vice
Yeah,
versa. It's really specialized for them.
yeah,
Which was obviously does include footballers. Like the vast majority of footballers that move from the EU into the UK are of the age of 18 to 30.
yeah.
So I presume there is going to be a knock-on effect to what we're doing here. But that was one of the things that the government have come out and said they're still working on with the
Yeah.
EU.
Do
So
you
Yeah.
there's
know
obviously
what?
no.
I think a lot of it, the wording was sort of low skilled work, which from the football that I've seen this year, most of the games I've watched.
No, what I was going to say, Andy, was it was 18 to 30, and I never ever went on one of them holidays. I must have missed out. I must have missed
Yeah.
out. So maybe I can change the numbers on my passport or something and get on an 18
Oh,
to
wow.
30. It was all I think it was Magaluf and Ayia Napa and
Yeah.
some of the hotter spots in Europe that I missed out on. So I feel like I've missed part of me growing up.
The best you got was Scarborough, Tony.
Don't knock Whitby and Scarborough.
Wow.
And I like the northeast coast as well. But listen, Andy, sorry, go on, right?
Yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to say because Andy, it's an important one, isn't it? And Tony and I are always talking about these unintended consequences, and obviously this sort of like loose trade deal that they've got into with the EU. It does frustrate me that actually, uh, um, you know, from our sort of big exports, of which football is one, it's 1% of our GDP, it's a big part of our economy. That's not more clear and explicit and kind of front of line, the traditional markets of fishing. And these other markets are very much sort of front of news, but actually kind of movement of labour, because actually it works both ways, isn't it? As well, in terms of the opportunity for young British players to be able to go and do the same overseas as well.
Yeah, it's not reported on enough, really. Like you said, the size, like if you go around the world, and I've been fortunate enough to do so. Fair enough, it was like the best part of a decade ago, but the Premier League is ubiquitous around the world. Like it's a domestic product for us, but everywhere you go in the world, you see jerseys, and it's often the first point of contact for a conversation with a local when you're anywhere in the world is about football, and usually about the Premier League. So you can't underestimate the power of that as our country. And yet it doesn't really get spoken about in these political circles. And yet, it's one of the unintended consequences of Brexit, as you said, Ryan. Like, no one was ever talking about during the referendum what's going to be the effect on my local football team. But I suspect if you spoke to a lot of people who did vote for Brexit,
I was. Me and Tony were doing that. We just didn't get picked up, did we, Tony?
So listen, Andy, just for the benefit of our the people on the call, just give us the basics on GBE first. Just a quick fire run through of GBE and the sort of key points, and then we'll do the same on so governing body endorsement is GBE, and then we'll do the same on elite significant contribution, which is ESC, which is you talk about it.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense to do it this way around. And just jumping off from Brexit, obviously pre-Brexit, there was the freedom of movement within the EU. So any footballers could move to the UK from the EU as long as they were, EU nationals, and you'd be able to get a work permit for them. And that stretched all the way down to 16 years of age, because that's what freedom of movement, it overrode the FIFA regulations. But since we left the EU, the Home Office and the FAs had to come up with a point system by which you knew you were getting quality individuals coming into play. And it got in, and that kind of went across all industries. It wasn't just a specific football thing, and other sports have these governing body endorsements as well. And obviously, the governing body of football is the FA. So basically, what that means is when you are trying to buy a player from outside of the domestic market, you need to go to the FA and show that this player hits certain criteria in order for them to say yes, they are good enough according to our rules to then get a work permit from the Home Office. So that's what the system is. In terms of how you get those governing body endorsements, there's a couple of different ways. The first and probably more straightforward is an auto pass, which is for international players who play for a top 50 ranked nation and play a certain percentage of minutes for those nations. And it goes on the ranking of the nation, what percentage of minutes you need to play. So if you are playing for a top 10 ranked nation, then it only needs to be 30% of minutes in the last 12 months for competitive internationals. That is, it discludes friendlies from the calculation. And then it goes the minutes go up as you go down the rankings, if that makes sense. Yeah. If you play for a nation outside of the top 50 ranked, then you can't get an auto pass. You can get a couple of points if you're a regular for those nations that are outside the top 50, but then we come into the separate criteria, the GBE criteria, which were set out in 2020 initially, and they do change slightly, but not too much. and there's a separate set of criteria which is based upon where you play your football. So if you're playing in a top ranked league, then you get more points for that, and also the number of minutes that you're playing in those leagues is part of that. And then there's also things like continental football. So if you're playing in the Champions League or the Europa League or the Conference League as well, and then you can get some points for that, and how far your club progresses gets you more points. And then where your club finishes in the league is another set of criteria. And then there's also some criteria for youth players and things like that. So that's the basics of it. If you get up to 15 points across all those criteria, then you have enough basically to be able to go to the FA and say, yes, you get a GBE, and therefore you can get a work permit to come and play in this country. The rules are similar for Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as well. There are some slight changes. Scotland tends to be a little bit more forgiving with its exceptions panel, which is a panel that you can convene if the player doesn't hit 15 points. Then you can go to the SFA and say, look, we don't get the 15 points, but we do think that this player is going to be able to contribute at the highest level of the Scottish game. And so would you consider giving us a work permit for that player? And then it's a decision to be made by the 6-person panel, whether they do or whether they don't.
Yeah, and am I right in saying it's sort of slightly easier to get a work permit in Scotland than it is in England?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. The stats say that. It's actually quite a high percentage of players who get work permit in Scotland don't actually hit 15 points. My last calculations for the last season made it almost 80% of players who were imported from outside of Scotland who needed a work permit didn't actually hit 15 points. So that shows how lenient the exceptions panel is in Scotland. It's not the same in England, and obviously England has the ESC criteria.
Yeah. So and what happens I suppose in Northern Ireland it's a smaller market. In Wales it's a smaller market. Are they bringing any foreign players in? And obviously Ireland's already in the European Union, so that doesn't. The Republic of Ireland's in the European Union, so that doesn't matter. And having said that, there's a special relationship with the Republic of Ireland as well, isn't there, to get players? Could you just talk to us about the other nations?
Yeah, so absolutely. If you wanted to sign players from Ireland, then there is a reciprocal agreement. I forget the technical name for it now, but basically you treat them pretty much as British players. That doesn't count for foreign players who are playing in Ireland. They have to have Irish citizenship to avail of this. I know there was a New Zealand player playing in Ireland who a lot of EFL clubs are interested in, but they couldn't get him until he'd passed a different set of criteria. So yeah, Irish players from the age of 18, and this was a big change for like a lot of obviously academies used to bring Irish players over much younger, but they have to be 18 to come over to England, which has allowed the Irish League actually to develop, and a lot of their young players have stayed a bit longer, which has improved the quality of their league. So we do see like the types of Mason Melia, who he signed a pre-contract at 17 to come to England. I think it's Spurs. I think it was someone, can't remember who it was specifically who signed him. But yeah, so that's one area. And then you mentioned Wales and Northern Ireland. So obviously they have that criteria because they're part of the UK, under the UK government, and they don't have ESC, which we'll come on to in a second. So actually what we're seeing is that there aren't any foreign players coming into Northern Ireland and Wales unless they have like heritage nationality, so the parents or the grandparents have citizenship, in which case obviously that's a different story, and you can come in on that. But in terms of using the GBE criteria, because it's so difficult, because it's so high at 15 points, it's actually very difficult to bring in players who are going to be attracted to the Welsh and Northern Irish leagues, even though
afford to pay them the wages that these guys who hit the automatic sort of passes would.
Exactly. Even though TNS and Lion have been in the Conference League, and you mentioned to Pete there about attracting players. You would think that it would be quite a good thing for them to be able to shop in those minor European markets or worldwide markets to maybe improve their squad that way, but they're still very limited to domestic players at this stage.
And somebody, Pat, thank you, Pat. He's just put Mason Melia, St. Pat's Athletic to Spurs. So you were
Yeah.
right, Andy. Well done. Thanks for that, Pat. Appreciate that. I hope you're well in the west of Ireland. Let's talk about ESC then, Andy. Elite significant contribution.
Yeah. So this was brought in off the back of, well, we don't specifically know, but a lot of clubs were lobbying the FA for, again, pre-Brexit, they were able to sign players that were younger through freedom of movement. And what they felt was a lot of clubs felt that they were being priced out of the market for players because they were almost having to wait for them to be fully established as either internationals or playing in a Band 1 or Band 2 league. I should maybe touch on the bandings as well at this point because, I mentioned about the quality of the league that you're playing, and that is really relevant to ESC. The Band 1 leagues is another term really for your big five. I think everyone is familiar with who they are: Italy, Spain, France, and Germany, as well as the Premier League, the top divisions of those nations. But then there's also Band 2, which is Netherlands, Belgium, Portugal, and Turkey. So they would be like kind of like the second ranked nations. Band 3 is more worldwide. It's Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and the US, the MLS. And then Band 4 and Band 5 are really interesting because it's mainly European based, but it's all called those minor leagues. So the Czech League, the Danish League. If you include Band 5 in that, you got the Polish League, Sweden, Norway, all of Greece, Serbia, Croatia, all of these minor European leagues, along with a couple of the minor South American leagues like Colombia and Chile. So all of those, Band 1 to Band 5, if those players don't get the 15 points that you need for them to get the work permit, then in 2023, the FA brought in this ESC, Elite Significant Contribution legislation, which basically says, okay, they don't get the 15 points, but you can still maybe have a place in your squad for them. But you only have a limited number of spaces. So Premier League clubs have up to 4 spaces. Championship clubs also have up to 4. And then League One and League Two get places as well. So they get 2 spaces each in their squads to register these players.
And just to be clear, Andy, it's just the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, not the National League, not the SPL or any other league on these islands. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, those are the only 4 leagues that fall under the ESC legislation. As you know, it's an interesting one in football that, the UK government is obviously covering all of these 4 constituent countries, but everyone has specific FAs that manage that, and the other FAs haven't taken this ESC on yet. I don't know where it's at politically in terms of whether they can or whether they can't. But at this stage, it's just those 4 divisions, as you say. But the criteria, there's still some criteria. It's not a complete wild card. You can't just sign anybody. But the criteria are very wide. So as long as a player has played 5 appearances in any of those Band 1 to 5 leagues that I just mentioned, and you can get the full list, but you can Google it, but you can certainly get them on the GB Expert Hub as well. As long as they play 5 appearances in those leagues, or even a youth league from that. So if you wanted to sign someone from Serbia's under-19 league that you've seen and you liked, or if as an agent you've got a client in those leagues and you didn't realise you could get them to the UK, you absolutely can do. And there's loads of different criteria under that as well. If they've played 1 international appearance for a top 50 ranked nation, or 1 youth appearance for a top 50 ranked nation, then they're eligible for an ESC. If you've got clients who are playing underage football for a nation that's outside of the top 50, as long as they've played 5 competitive appearances for that nation, either senior or junior, then they get eligible for an ESC. As long as they've played a single minute of continental football, whether that's UEFA, CONMEBOL, AFC, CAF, OFC, then they're eligible for an ESC as well. So there's a whole heap of players
Andy, who's utilising the ESC? Which league, which group of clubs in which division are utilising the ESC most, and how are they utilising it?
Yeah, the Championship have taken hold of this ESC and absolutely ran with it. So every Championship club gets 4 slots, as I said. There's some clubs that have taken all 4 slots. Obviously, it's only been 4 transfer windows that this has been in for.
Yeah.
So I think some recruitment teams took a little bit of time to assess their options and made sure that they were looking in the right places. But the Championship are responsible for over half of the ESC transfers that have happened so far. Premier League have only done around about 30 altogether. The Championship have done over 90, around about 100.
And then
And
what
this
about
is
League One and League Two, Andy?
Yeah, so it's coming. I think League One, we've seen it treble this season as compared to the previous season. A little bit of that is because of Birmingham City, and
Yeah.
some of the bigger budget clubs. But as you were speaking to Pete, there's a lot of big budget clubs in League One still,
Yeah.
and a lot of them
For
want
sure.
to use this international market. League Two, it's not been taken up really. Only Grimsby and Notts County, and then Crawley, when they were in there, have used the SC. But you've used it fairly well, those clubs, and I think a lot of the rivals of those clubs in League Two will start to look and go, well, if they can do it, we should be looking into this as well.
Yeah. So from the agent's point of view on the call, it's more a tool that's readily available and used for younger players for the Premier League and for players generally in the Championship and League One.
Yeah, it depends on your level. Like the Premier League are using it for younger players. I think that's what the remit that they wanted from the FA was to sign this unproven talent
Yeah.
and be able to get them into their squads, which
Yeah.
Bournemouth, Brighton, Chelsea, Aston Villa have been the primary users of it in the Premier League. And then the Championship, it's a mixture between that young talent, but also players that they think can improve their first team straight away. And League One, League Two, they really do need to use their budget to affect their first team, really. So it's very much different uses as you go down the pyramid. But what I will say is that I did a free podcast for anyone to listen to with an agent last week, who's the agent of Alassane Jatta, who signed for Notts County in January 2024. And he might be on the move this summer up the pyramid from League Two to potentially the Championship. So it'll be a really interesting one for other agents to listen to see,
And
how that came about and what the benefits are.
so you can put that in the chat, Andy, and obviously your contact details in the chat. But we have a question from Andrea, and Andrea, thank you for this. What is the maximum age for a player to be eligible for ESC?
Maximum age?
Yeah.
Well, there isn't really a maximum age, as long as the player can play.
Yeah, it gets the criteria. It does. It's been used in the Premier League for younger players, but there's no maximum. You can. I think there was a 29-year-old signed, wasn't there, using an ESC?
29-year-old signed for Derby. Lars Jørgen Salvesen signed for Derby in January at 29. Birmingham used one for a South Korean player at 31 in January as well. So
the answer is there's no maximum really. You can, as long as you hit the criteria, and that's ready-made players. I suppose the further down you go, the less development players they want to sign.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I will say about maximum age is that in Scotland, St Johnstone tried to sign Roman Eremenko at 37 or 38 years old, and he was actually rejected for a work permit. I guess they thought that he wouldn't develop the game in Scotland or whatever. But he was I think he's probably a friend of the St Johnstone manager, it's Valakari, and he didn't get the work permit, so I didn't go through.
So listen, Andy, that's fantastic. I know you've run us through that very, very quickly. I know there's a lot more detail and a lot more knowledge to be gained. I would definitely, if you are interested in working with foreign players and bringing them to these shows, you need to be signed up to Andy's Substack, isn't it? GB Expert Hub. But I think the opportunities there far outweigh the costs and the risks associated.
Yeah, absolutely. And for agents specifically, like it'd be really interesting if you do know the rules, then you can go down your own roster and see, where everybody's at, and if there's anything that you can do as an agent to get them into the shop window for English or Scottish moves, because as we know, it's a thriving marketplace at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andy, and good luck with the new addition to the family in the
Yeah.
next month.
Yes, she's going to be called ESC, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Elsie for short.
Elsie. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, I
Elsie.
think you need to close your own transfer window after this baby as well.
You've got enough new signings. You've got one coming in the summer window. Great stuff.
Summer
Thanks,
window,
Andy. All the
baby.
best. All the best, mate.
Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers, Andy. Take care. Really useful information, Ryan, there.
Yeah, and what I really like about what Andy does is that he does if you sign up to his Substack and you get the newsletter, he does feed a player in, doesn't he? Who's available for either an ESC or a GBE, and I mean the names are incredible, and where these people are coming from. I mean.
Yeah.
It was Eurovision last week, and that's what some of the newsletters are like. It can be one day it can be Hungary, the next day it could be Finland. It's the full range, but it's interesting to see who's available.
And
I think, like you said, that depending on what your network is or how you're working as an agent, there might be some opportunities there.
yeah, and ESC does not stand for Eurovision Song Contest, does it, Ryan? It's definitely something different. But listen, that's gone really quickly, Ryan, hasn't it? What about are you going to just wrap it up for us?
Yeah, look, loads of information there. I thought the stuff coming out of Gregor was really pertinent for us, and I know everybody's waiting. And the wait, Tony, it appears like it may continue for many years to come. But I think the longer it goes on, my own instinct is that the better it will be for agents. I think that was really, really interesting to absorb. And really, we're all building up to, and everybody seems to be feeling the same, of a really busy summer. And I just can't remember the last time there's been this amount of momentum up into a transfer window. And we've spoke about potentially only 1 year left of PSR, and I think a lot of clubs are going to be taking advantage of that. I think a lot to get your teeth into. But really, if you've got any questions about anything that you've heard or any general queries, please feel to drop Tony or myself an email.
And look, if you've enjoyed this this second meeting of the FTF Agents Association, tell your colleagues, tell your friends in the industry. We do want more members to sign up. We've got plans to get board members on as well. We're in talks with quite a few people. So that's another update, and we did want to get towards doing an in-person event at some point, but that really, Ryan, depends on us growing the membership.
Yeah, of course it does. So we'll be continuing to assess that, and obviously anything that you guys can do to spread the word is much appreciated. Yeah. So I think that kind of brings us up to the end, Tony.
Can I go to the beach now?
Off you go.
Whitley Bay, Tynemouth, beautiful beaches up in the northeast of England. That's me. Thanks, Ryan. Brilliant.
Thank you for everyone for tuning in. We'll see you
guys.
soon.
You'll get a recording in the next couple of days. Cheers now.